Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Do I Have Time for This? The series that looks at old and new video games, both indie and AAA, to help you figure out if you've got the time to play, finish, 100% complete it, or just leave it in your backlog to forever gather dust. Today we're going to take a look at Auroch Digital's first foray into first-person shooting, Warhammer 40,000 Boltgun. Published by Focus Entertainment, this retro-style shooter genre, now colloquially called boomer shooters, uses the Warhammer 40k license to bring us a very mechanically safe, but incredibly fun game, dripping with as much atmosphere as there is blood and guts. Boltgun puts us in the heavily armoured shoes of Malum Cato, a veteran space marine who has seen their fair share of battle and bloodshed, who has been sent to the Forge world Greer after a warp rift has opened, allowing the forces of chaos to invade. When I was looking for coverage of this game online, I found a suspiciously high amount of people who openly loved this game, but never actually provided any sort of coverage on it. And now I sit here typing a script for it, I think I understand why. This game is well and truly devoted to the source material, and definitely not to a fault. I think a lot of people don't want to speak too in depth about this game, for fear of invoking the ire of the devout Warhammer community. However, my armor is contempt, and I'll happily wade into a den of demons to make sure the layman's voice is heard. So grab your bolt gun, throw on your armor, and praise the Emperor. It's time to slay some heretics. When looking at a purely single-player shooter campaign, there's certain elements you want to look at: the shooting, the guns, the movement, and the enemy AI. You'll probably start with a handful of weapons, slowly walking around the map, to becoming a speed demon, never taking your finger off the sprint button, and cycling through countless weapons in your arsenal. Let's start with the most obvious part of the game, the titular bolt gun. The lore states these bolters are so powerful and have so much recoil kick that a normal human can't shoot one. You need to be an augmented space marine to effectively wield it. Auroch Digital completely nailed this aspect of the game. As the standard weapon you have no matter what, this thing smashes through standard enemies both at the start of the game and at the end. Certain power-ups can even allow it to tear through the tougher elite enemies later in the game too. It's really hard to describe how crunchy and impactful the shooting is here. You can hear bullets pinging off armored enemies, whilst beam and explosive weapons tear through them with reckless abandon. It's worth noting here that I played Boltgun on the hard difficulty, which may have influenced the sponginess of the hordes of chaos I came across, but didn't make my Space Marine feel weak in the same way that other games have in the past. I find a big, tanky protagonist shouldn't really spend the majority of their game camping in a corner sniping with their heavy bolter, and I think the balance was perfectly struck on hard. I didn't try the higher difficulty, but I don't think it will be as well balanced. If you want to tear through enemies like paper, I guarantee the easy mode has your back. As I said before, the shooting is punchy and impactful, but what about the actual weapons?
And that's how, with a few minor adjustments, you can turn a regular gun into 5 guns.
This is where I might ruffle some purist Warhammer 40k fans. Based on the extremely long wiki page on the weapons of the Imperium, I think all of the ones in the game are lore accurate. I actually think there's a reasonable mix of weapons here too, with your standard shotgun and heavy machine gun, by the way, heavy bolter was my favourite, alongside an explosive weapon and a few beam weapons I won't spoil. I do think there's a weapon for everyone here. Whilst I can look and see a great many guns having been left off, I'm certain some of these could be added into the sequel. The shotgun, I have to say, is a bit of a letdown in the later game unless it has a power-up. A very specific gripe, but honestly, what is a shooter without a great shotgun? We also get a laundry list of your typical power-ups, but one in particular called the Machine Spirit lets you upgrade one of your weapon's attack power, but also changes how the gun operates in a subtle way, like increasing clip size, increasing number of pellets, increasing fire rate, or lets you move at normal speed when you're using a heavy weapon. We do get a melee weapon in the form of the classic Space Marine weapon, the Chain Sword. This thing will ruin 90% of the enemy's day with just a mash of the melee button, and the gore that flies out from them as you cleave them in two is just phenomenal. In some cases, stronger enemies can knock you out of the animation too, if they're not weakened with gunfire first. You also have a dash ability to knock enemies around and out of the way, which looked like something I had equipped, and I thought we'd get an option to swap out later in the game, but sadly that never came to pass. Perhaps another one for the sequel. Next is something I think I need a bit of a debate about down in the comments. As far as my casual fan level knowledge can fathom, Space Marines can run fast due to their augmentations. Where Boltgun lost me a little bit was the jump. I understand these absolute machines are extremely strong, but they're also extremely heavy, so the floaty jump seemed a little off to me. Don't get me wrong, the sound design of each thud as you walk around these ruined facilities and war machines are spot on, and when you land from a jump, you feel like you break the floor. I just don't get why it was so floaty. Maybe it was so they could just add some light platforming, I don't know. It felt a little off. Being able to mantle was a nice touch to add to the boomer shooter genre, as the number of times I've been an inch from a ledge and not grabbed it in other games is really annoying. As I said, the feel of being a Space Marine was really here, and nothing exemplifies it more than this. I thought to myself at a big drop, what would happen if I just leaped off? And it turns out, no elevator? No problem. My first major letdown of this game is probably the enemy AI. Auroch Digital spent a lot of time in their marketing of the game, speaking about the AI they were implementing to the enemies, to make them more like the AI found in modern games. But I think they borrowed some from Call of Duty Ghosts.
And also added an AI system to it, so we have fish move out of the way when you get close to them. This is powered by a new next-gen engine that gives us amazing graphic fidelity and really innovative fish. Call of Duty has been as successful as it is we focus on fish.
For the most part, the Horde of Chaos simply just moves towards you, that's it. Rarely do you see flanking maneuvers, or the Call of Duty tactic of grenade spamming you when you hide. In fact, the Chaos Space Marines will 100% of the time throw a grenade when near you, and oftentimes blow themselves up. It's a shame because you can really ape a lot of the AI by just standing on a box. And the ranged AI you can strafe or peek from up high and trivialize the threat they initially bring. I think the blue demons were the best at putting pressure on you, but the large majority just make a beeline for you and that's it, which was very disappointing. Honestly, I'm still a big fan of the retro graphic shooters. I don't know why, but it just gets me in a way a lot of slick modern shooters don't. Boltgun has this in spades, and whilst I don't understand half of what I'm seeing due to being a casual fan, I do think the world building and environmental designs are great. There's something about visiting what looks like an abandoned and destroyed crypt filled with demons that just gets me pumped for a shootout. Environments really get across the war-torn aesthetic, and whilst I didn't get as much warped chaos scenery as I think we could have done, I think the trippy purple haze that Auroch Digital used to show the invading forces' influence on the world was really well done considering the art style they used. Enemy designs were also a strong suit of the game, looking very true to the source material and being almost color-coded as to what is Plague, Demon, or Marine. One thing I really want to shout out here is the music. Once the combat kicks off, a grimy industrial metal soundtrack kicks in, which perfectly captures the machines and heavy weapons cutting through wave after wave of demons. It's not quite the level of, say, Doom, but it really is a great soundtrack I'd happily listen to outside of the game. The last thing I want to mention in this section in terms of the atmosphere and attention to detail this game has, there's a dedicated taunt button. Yes, at any point you can point and shout at any enemy you like, calling them heretical scum and saying you're going to bathe in their blood. It doesn't do anything gameplay wise, it's just an awesome little feature. So let's get down to it. How long does this game take? As I said before, I played on the 3rd difficulty, Emperor's Mercy, which translates as hard basically. I didn't find this to be much of a challenge up until chapter 3, where the difficulty really ramps up, and the game in total took me 13 hours. I think if you were to play from the start on the hardest difficulty, then do a cleanup on the easier difficulty, this wouldn't take much time to complete at all. Achievement wise, you're only looking at finishing the game on the hardest difficulty and getting the secrets for each chapter. With a guide, nothing too taxing. In terms of replay value, I'll be honest, I don't see there being much here, due to the limit on the variety of what Boltgun has to offer. I just want to preface everything I'm about to say with a caveat. I'd say for the most part, I had as much fun on hour 1 of the game as I was having on hour 10, due to the solid gameplay and feel of being a Space Marine. That being said, whilst I was fed a steady drip feed of weapons to keep the gameplay engaging, the environments all started to blur together over time to just become very much more of the same. At the start of chapter 2 we reach a desert level, to which I thought, great, we have a new environment to play with, but this quickly turned into more factory type levels, just with an orange hue. And I don't know if this is just indicative of the 40k universe, where more or less everything is just a constant war machine, but I just wanted a little more than what we had here. Chapter 1 had an almost ruined city I was keen to explore, but they never really built on it. Then when it came to chapter 3 we're met by a forge, so just factories with lava. I get it, it's all on one forge planet, so it's bound to look similar. But there wasn't enough variety here to keep me excited at the new visuals, and the game was solely riding on gameplay at that point. The enemies sadly suffer the same issue. I'd seen about 80% of the enemies I'd see for the rest of the game at the conclusion of chapter 1, with a few more added in chapter 2 which were then more or less removed for chapter 3. It's so disappointing when there's this unknowable form of chaos and we are subjected to a handful of enemy types. We never get to see the Tyranids, Tau, Necrons or Orcs, anything outside of the standard Chaos offerings. Even the Chaos Space Marines only have one type, with 2 supplementary elite types. I just feel like we could have had a little more variety in what we were presented with, especially as so many were introduced in chapter 1. Now I know this may be considered overly harsh on a £20 or $20 game. I just found the gameplay to be so great that I would have loved more content. What I will say is this game is perfect for people with limited time to play games. I played on a mix of both PC with keyboard and mouse and on the Steam Deck, and it worked perfectly on both. This game autosaves regularly and has a quick save function that lets you save whenever you want, even in the middle of combat. So if you have to drop the game to go do something, you can do so without losing a second of progress. And the fact that it works great on Steam Deck means you can take it with you wherever you go. I can tentatively recommend Warhammer 40k Boltgun. The reason I say this is because of the solid gameplay, which is some great retro first-person shooting that really makes you feel the weight of the weapons in your super soldier hands, pulverizing demons into mush. Fans of the franchise will definitely get more out of this than the casual fan, but I still think the casual first-person shooter players should play this, especially at the lower price point and your ability to stop and start play whenever you want. Whilst the lack of story, enemy and environment variety become more noticeable the more the game goes on, the gameplay is equally as satisfying when you first start playing to when you finish the campaign, and I think in short bursts, this game is a really fun time. I'm excited to see what Auroch Digital do next. Now they've made such a solid first-person shooter, and I hope they're allowed to use the license again to make a sequel of Boltgun that's bigger, badder, and with more variety to make sure people stay hooked to completion. Editing Rhino here. It turns out after I originally wrote this script, a DLC was released called Forges of Corruption, which added a few new enemies, guns and locations, alongside a Horde mode. A Horde mode is always a welcome addition, and whilst this update definitely is a step in the right direction, the new things added are fairly few in number, and the new environments are again more of the same. As I said before, maybe we just need to wait for a sequel on this one. So, do you think you have time for Warhammer 40k Boltgun? On this channel I like to give my thoughts on the game, alongside a bit more of a deep dive on the time you have to invest, so you know what you're getting into before you load it up. Because time is precious, right? If you enjoyed the video or found it useful, feel free to like and share. If you subscribe, I'm looking to put out regular content like this alongside some more in-depth video essays and freeform videos, so stick around, and if you have any requests on future videos, just drop them in the comments. And finally, If you want to come chat with me, you can find me over on x.com/gracious_rhino. I'm Gracious Rhino. Look after each other, and I'll catch you soon.